Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for this introduction. And we try to be faster than Finns anyway, but it's difficult, more difficult with Latvian friends, which are our southern neighbors. They used to be much quicker on us. But thank you for the invitation. Thank you for this big audience. I understand that the issue of education is important in Slovakia. I have to admit that my job at the ministry is not easy because in Estonia education is one of the hottest topics in political discussions, and usually the results are still good. So Estonia is relatively far away from here. Our good neighbors Finland, Sweden, Russia and Latvia are around us, but we share most of the time a common history actually with you. Already when you had some connections with the Austrian-Hungarian Empire when Estonia was part of the Russian Empire, but it was German-speaking more or less, as it was so-called the Deutschen Ostseeprovinzen Russlands. So quite a lot of cultural heritage from that time, and before that I will come to that. That's why we call the Swedish time as a good old Swedish time, and it's linked to education. But right now we are members of most important organizations as well as you. What is a bit different in Estonia, we are member of Digital 7 also. There are countries which are very interested in digital development, like Israel, Canada, New Zealand, and ICT sector is relatively big in Estonia, so it's we are calling ourselves a digital society, and we like to be, as a small country, we like to be in different rankings. We have a low or quite competitive tax system. We are really digitally advanced. It's easy to do business in Estonia, but most of the things actually are what Slovakia is also saying about your economy. But what is important for us is really that we have been in very favorable positions in PISA rankings. It's not ranking, it's more like analyze. So last time really we were best in Europe and behind Singapore and Japan in the world, if we're talking about life sciences. And as Peter was already mentioned, it's not only that the kids are very clever, but the system is very equal. So it doesn't matter from which is the socioeconomic background of your family. You can get very good education anyway. And when PISA test is quite often considered that only the societies where very homogeneous groups live, and that the societies we don't have very big differences, then now we have to say that we have still many problems. We are still coming from the ruins of the Soviet Empire. We are developing, but not so fast as maybe we had wished in 90s. And we have a big Russian minority, more than 25%. They have their own Russian-speaking primary schools, at least, not anymore Russian-speaking upper secondary or higher education level. But still, there are different groups, and of course the living standard in rural areas is different than the big cities, but we try to keep the level of education high all over the country. And how we do it? There are 3 pillars about which I'm going to talk. And first, some words about history, how we came to this position we are right now. As I told, we are calling in Estonia the 17th century as a good old Swedish time, because King Gustav II Adolphus from Sweden created University of Tartu, our oldest university, and at the same time compulsory education became. It was of course closely linked with the Protestant religion and the idea that everybody must learn God's Bible in its own language. So you had to create a school system also. What was interesting, but even when the Russian Empire came, and also this German-speaking part of the Russian Empire, according to the Peace Treaty, many of the laws which regulated local life in Estonia were still in power until the middle of the 19th century, like law on churches, which regulated education also at that time. So it was a long process. And when we became independent in 1918, of course, we took the best from the system we had, but the teaching and learning, which was in Estonia, was now on higher level, and free education and comprehensive school is something what is still very important in our system. And of course, when we are talking about new approaches to teaching and learning, sometimes we come to a conclusion that actually it's the same thing what people which were active in school or education system were talking about already 100 years ago, when it was called reform pedagogy. When we're talking about the Soviet period, the Soviet Union was quite strange empire, because the most important thing as education was not centralized actually. So all the republics in the Soviet Union had still their own education system in their own language and even their own curriculum. So most of study materials, programs were developed in Estonia. Of course, it was a bit different on higher education, but the basic schools still had the same roots continuously. And adding, of course, many things, as we call in Estonia, that school is much more than a school. It means that you can go to singing choir or folk dance group at the school and spend the whole day at the school if you wish. It depends, of course, on school owner, and school owner is usually in Estonia the local municipality. We have approximately 4% kids going to private schools also, but primary school, basic school is in the hands of local municipalities. And during Soviet time, the compulsory education, the basic school was 9 grades. What happened in 1991, when we became independent again? Of course, democratization, decentralization, new ideology, and compulsory education, 9 years, was also introduced. New ideologies, social constructivism, and of course a lot of contacts with our Finnish friends. We didn't take over anything directly from their system, but we learned a lot about curricular development, position of teacher, managing the school network. And now I'm coming to the first pillar of our system, which is, I think, the most important also. It's the teacher. And the teacher is quite autonomous and independent. Teacher is hired by the headmaster of the school. Headmaster is hired by the local municipality which owns the school, or school owner if it's not municipality. But we have requirements. So in preschool education, it must be at least bachelor degree or equivalent. But from primary, already from the first grade, it's master's degree. It means that the teacher is a real professional and knows his or her subject, and of course all the pedagogical finesses also. So it is relatively high requirement in nowadays world, but we are still thinking that we have to keep it. We have system for teacher evaluation and training also, of course, according to the law, 3% from the money which is delivered for teacher's salary, or equivalent to 3%, has to go to a continuous training of teachers. So all the teachers have to take some courses, but it's not obligatory in a way, but the headmaster is, of course, doing the training plans and trying to keep the track that she or he is doing. But of course, every professional is interested himself or herself about her continuous development. What we had before 2005, we had this activity-based evaluation of teachers. It meant that when you were preparing a lot of materials, when you were doing more than necessary, when you could get a little bit higher salary, but it was dependent on quite formal criteria. So we introduced professional standard. We tried to transmission of evaluation to teachers' competencies, but they were still closely linked to a salary. So if you had some tarification level reached, when you could get a bit higher salary, and of course the contact hours, very important. But 2013 we abolished it all. So we introduced the professional standards of teachers. It was voluntary for those which were working earlier, but compulsory for them after 2013, and you get it already automatically from a university. But it has no links to a salary, so it's up to a headmaster how he or she values the work of a teacher. And it's not connected to contact hours also directly. So you can have 10, you can have 20, depends on which hour things you have to do at school, because it's not only teaching, there are many other things also, and you support personnel. Talking about this inclusive education is very important nowadays. And from 2015, after this reform, even the universities introduced the changes in the teaching training programs, so they respond to professional standards also 100%. And in Estonia, universities are responsible for teaching their new teachers, and of course for the research also about teachers' position. what was very hot topic and probably is here also or have been or in most countries is the teacher's salary. We had a huge problem for 6-7 years ago. The teacher's salary was it was very low. You can say it was less than 600 euros even. So the government and political parties said that our priority is to raise the salary. In a way, the PISA results helped also because we were very critical about our system. I think everybody is usually very critical about the education system. But when it came up that our teachers are really doing a very good job, and it was really very hard to resist and say that we can't add some money to the teacher's salary. It has, of course, as the minimum wage is set by the government and covered by the central government with resources which are delivered to local municipalities. Of course, the minimum wage, which is in big city, is not the same thing as it is on some small island, where it might be the highest salary of all the community, because all the teachers must get at least this minimum wage. So it has created some problems because the raise of teachers' wages has been quite rapid, but of course everybody agrees that it was the right thing to do. So we have professional teachers, and we have really even managed with the help of politicians to raise the salary. But another thing is the tool which teachers use every day, of course, and it's the curriculum, which is also universal, standardized for all the country. Even the private schools, religious or Waldorf, they have to work according to a national curriculum. Of course, we can develop their own school's curriculum, but the goals set by the central government are the same for all schools. We started from this Lehrplan, as in most countries, so very detailed description what and how to do. We had transforming period, and it was 1996 we had the first framework for school curriculum, general subject competencies, and with social constructivist approach to learning. It was something new, of course. Many teachers are maybe still not used to this new system. But it gave, of course, much more decision-making to the schools, freedom, and the integration of the different subjects. I must admit that it has taken 10-15 years, and now it's working more and more. And I think that one of the reasons is also the use of digital technology. When teachers are using textbooks and printed materials only when they tend to go according to them, because they have done it for many, many years. But we are in Estonia strongly advising to use the new technology, and we are producing the content for even for smartphones, because the kids have them anyway. And of course, it's the easiest way to say that no, you can't use them. A bit easier way is to, not maybe easier, it's more complex way, but the way which really the teachers and the kids probably will get some use of it is to produce content which you can use for learning, and learning in an integrated way. we tend to change this curriculum every 5th or 6th year, or not change, but make it contemporary in a way, because otherwise schools say that it's too old-fashioned and new things are not in there. So we separated primary and upper secondary curriculum, modified general competencies. There is of course always a problem that all the teachers look only at their own subject and not so much on the general competencies. We're working on it, and we created subject domains. But latest was now 2014, when we decreased this national curriculum and renewed it. It was more technical in a way, but what was important is that it was the first country in the world, I think, we added digital competence as a general competence. So it means that for all the subjects you have to use it. It's not now something which is coming from somewhere else. It should be one of the competencies to have ability to live in society, because in Estonia all persons, we don't have only physical identity, we have also digital identity, which means that we can sign documents, the government can interact with you only digitally and be sure that it is you who is. On the other hand, even elections we do have a digital way, so it's quite natural that you have to learn it all at school also. And of course the study results and outcomes were a bit modified also. We have, if we take this strategic approach for a moment, we have lifelong learning strategy, and it's of course very closely related to a curriculum and implementation of it. And first goal is to change the approach to learning, that it should be more student-centered. Of course, we still have a problem, lack of teachers in some subjects. In all countries, employers say that the education system is still not responding to their needs. We have this digital focus on lifelong learning. And of course, what is very important is equal opportunities, that really you have a school network which is high quality, but it's available all around the country. And of course, inclusive education, which is another big topic, but I will not touch too much here. And for that we have different programs, and we have used quite a lot of European Union funds also to invest into those programs. But at the same time, we have still problem that, as it was mentioned already, that somehow the system is not most efficient. Of course, in bigger cities there are more students per teacher, but in smaller municipalities less and less each year. We are centrally giving funds to municipalities according to the student-based rates. So you get for teacher salary, but it's a bit more complicated, and it depends on what, in which part your municipality is, and when it's the population is very small, but the area may be very big, when you get more money, or when it's on island. The coefficients are on the next slide, but it is when you're a big city, you get this amount for teacher salary. But we support the headmaster's salary. We support training, but most of it is not coming from these resources, but from European Union funds and from a school owner. we support study materials, and the study materials are prepared in Estonia by private companies, and it's up to the teacher which one she or he wants to use, and if they are digital or if they are paperback. When we are talking about equality, we have some kind of political slogan that the school lunch is free in Estonia. Actually, the government is supporting in many municipalities. It is for free, but usually it's a small amount which has to be paid. But it's really all the kids can have warm food, and it doesn't depend from their background. Because we have so poor families, but really the food what they get is the only warm lunch maybe they get during the day, and of course if everybody gets that, it's equal. And talking about inclusive education, when the students are going to normal schools, depending on their diagnosis, they can get per student from 1,000 to more than 40,000 euros to have support personnel and so on. These are groups, maybe not most interesting, but as you can see, even if you have only 10 students in class, the national curriculum has to be covered all over the country. The local community doesn't get money according to the number of schools it has in their territory, but according to the number of students. So it's up to them how many schools they are having, and in many cases they prefer to have more smaller schools, and that means that they have to add from their own budget. In many municipalities we had also communal reform. Bigger municipalities right now, they have decided already that higher quality and bigger schools are better, and that's what they are deciding by themselves. And in the case of upper secondary education, before this communal reform, we saw very big differences in quality of different upper secondary education institutions around the country. So we started to, in that case, centralize the system. So we have state gymnasiums or state upper secondary institutions in most of the counties. But in bigger cities, of course, the local municipalities say that they will keep them, they want to have them. So we didn't say that it's not allowed. If they want to do it, let them do it. But it was quality issue. So we created bigger schools to get better quality. And we are trying to work out this division of labor in that way, that the basic education, primary education, will be in the hands of local municipalities, and upper secondary will be the responsibility of central government. The third wing pillar, what I would like to talk about, is that it's external evaluation. We don't have school inspections in Estonia. We have a little bit more maybe than in Finland when we abolished it for 10-15 years ago, but we have 6 persons in Estonia right now which are called in a way inspectors, and they really go to the schools if something illegal is happening or something like that. But most of the system is working on the idea that all the data, all the results must be available to all the stakeholders. Parents, ministry, our schools, so it's somehow a neighborhood watch also, so you know what are the results of your neighbor, and of course the parents are very eager to know how are the schools doing, and actually it's what we are measuring is the outcomes of implementation of a national curriculum. And we have national exams in the end of basic school and upper secondary, and sample-based test on 3rd and 6th grades. It's in mother tongue or Estonian or Russian. It's in mathematics, and one of them is surprise every year. We don't know what comes. It might be whichever subject it is. But there are those sample schools which have to take it, but there are a lot of schools which take it voluntarily because they want to know how it's going. And for the kids, it's officially said that they can't be punished if the results is very bad, and it's not the fault of kids or students. Probably it's something wrong with the school, with the system, but you can't get a bad grade for that. In the end of primary school, we have 3 exams: creative work, and in the end of upper secondary school, we have also 3 national exams. It's very important if you want to go to a higher education institute, to the university, to get very good result. And this research or practical work is becoming more and more important because it's preparing you for higher education or vocational education. What is your choice? We are trying to enforce this formative assessment more and more, not only 1, 2, 4, 5, but to tell and give some information why and what is going on with a kid at the school. And now what we are trying to do is something totally different than measuring the academic results or achievements in different subjects. So we have introduced well-being questionnaires, as we call them. It means that we really ask from kids, of students, from teachers, from parents, what they think, what could be better, how is it with school bullying, and so on. And of course, first, it's 3rd year, I think, right now, and the first it was some newspapers tried to make some kind of ranking about all of this, and luckily we didn't succeed. So we get information how they are actually doing, and of course when they are doing examinations, when they can also give feedback at what about why do they think that they got that kind of result. So many different questionnaires, and some of the schools say, of course, that it's too much. Some of the schools say that it's much better than all the national exams because they can also get feedback from the teachers or students. So we are trying to introduce more and more that kind of evaluation also. But altogether, it forms quite a solid pillar of the system that actually you feel that what you're doing is measured somehow. And you can compare with our peer persons also, but not the process is measured, but the outcome of the process. And as I told already, one of main goals of a strategic approach is still moving towards a student-centered education. Already from 90s, with outcome-based curriculum. What I would like to mention from this slide, you will probably get all those slides anyway later also, so I will not read all the information but what is important is from 2004, the electronic education information system was created. It means that all the data about education is online available, not of course personal data, but it's made available for everybody. So you can compare different data about the schools, how many square meters per student, what's the qualification of teachers, what are the average results of national tests and so on. And it's really helpful in a way that it makes the system transparent. Yeah, what might be interesting from here? Yeah, I have mentioned more or less most important things from this side. Yeah. But what next? When we are talking about the responsibility in the education system, of course, the school owners are very different, the municipalities are different, but everybody understands that even if we have very strong and solid base in basic education, as OECD stresses that why this PISA test is so important is that when you get or measure the knowledge and skills which are very difficult to obtain later in life. So it's the basic knowledge, how to read, how to do maths, how to think logically, how to create or solve the problems. And that's okay, that's very good in Estonian system. We have created a system that all the kids really do it, all the stakeholders feel their responsibility. But the next step, how to actually use the very good knowledge and skills of young people, how to make them learn right things, or how not very many kids choose vocational education. More than 70% go to academic pathway, and then they should go to university. But the problem is that when they graduate from gymnasium, when they actually don't get any more degree, they don't get for higher education, they don't get from vocational education, it's more than 20% which are doing that. So they have quite good general knowledge, but they do not have any specific competencies. That's our big problem when we are talking about this digitalization and automation and so on. We are in a way digital society, but we are already seeing that knowledge that kids have only on general education level is far from enough. They should go to vocational education or higher education, and good results from that give them this possibility. But right now, unfortunately, the labor market is not so demanding yet, so they are hired without those specific knowledge, and it will be easier to give, of course, those specialist qualifications than to give us basic knowledge and skills. But anyway, we are working with it, but we have to change this approach a little bit. So even if you feel that you don't need to learn anymore, you should still try to make it to vocational school or higher education institution. And actually, as our strategy is called, lifelong learning is the main idea of the system. So it's really time when you have to learn whole your life. So it's strategy up until 2020, and we are working, of course, on a new one right now, and nobody knows what will be the content. It's really the first time when we don't know what will be in the strategy. But thank you. That was the short introduction, and the most important part are the questions usually.